Gareth Liddiard from TFS. Welcome to Australian Musician.
Hey, how you going, mate?
Really good. 5-6 years ago, things seemed to be going along smoothly for the Drones, playing all over the world, releasing great albums. Then out of the blue comes this other band. Tell me about the conversations you had with Fiona and Erica and Lauren about starting the band.
Well, it was easy with Erica because we had a lot to do with her. I guess she'd sung on the last couple of Drones records, doing just helping out with backing vocals and stuff. And she toured with us heaps, whether it's playing with us on stage or with her bands like Harmony or Modcon. So that was a no-brainer. We just went, yeah, what are you doing? We've got a tour booked in 3 months in the US with King Gizzard, but we don't have a band. And then with Lauren, I'd seen her play a gig and been impressed. So then I didn't know her, and then just got onto her through a mutual friend, and we just met at a pub, had a good time, and then 3 months later, or maybe it was 3 weeks later. It might have been 3 weeks. Yeah, we're in the US. Yeah, we just had to move fast. Yeah.
I had been touring with them a little bit. I was a backing singer with some other friends, Amanda and Quinn, on that last Feeling Kind of Free tour, and maybe another one. And so I think the conversation might have been kicking around, or we'd at least been sort of hanging out. And I don't know, I did some singing on that last record, and I can't remember exactly how it came up. They'd been talking about starting a new project and just doing something different with some kind of different parameters. And one day I just got the phone call, and they actually were teasing me for ages. And I think they were trying to pretend that they were wanting to ask my boyfriend if he wanted to play guitar in the band. And then they were actually like, no, we want you to play in the band. And so it was a pretty loose arrangement. I think we had booked a tour before we'd had a practice, maybe. And so it was a great little fire starter to just hurry up, get together, chuck some stuff at a wall, see what sticks kind of thing. And that was the initial incarnation. Like, it was very quick turnaround. I think it had been sitting with them for a little while, and the conversation might have been going for a while. But from that first phone call to actually getting in and writing some stuff was pretty fast.
In the beginning, what was the brief you gave to everyone about the kind of music you wanted to create?
Well, I guess, with the Drones, we'd become a real guitar band pretty much, when we came to Melbourne. Whereas, prior to that, in Perth, we had a lot more equipment that we had to sell to move to Melbourne. And we had all sorts of, sort of wacky synthesizers and drum machines and old keyboards, this, that. And we used to just do anything, really. And then it was when we moved to Melbourne, we had to sell all that and then keep the guitars because they're the most useful thing, really, and they're the most portable. And then, inevitably we became a guitar band, which is fine, but we were always into way more stuff than just that. Anyway, fast forward, God knows, 15 years or something, with the Drones, we were like, oh, can we just, mess with different instruments? And we were sharing a recording studio with a bunch of mates, and they all had all crazy, kooky, modern synths and old synths, and I don't know, you name it, just anything really, tape machines, anything you can sort of pick up and mess up and turn it into something weird. So we had access to that stuff again for the first time. And so when the Drones sort of ended, just because we didn't end, it's just on hiatus, just because the guys all had kids. So it was just, impossible to move fast. If we got an offer from a festival overseas, you know, the kind of the conversations we'd have to organize it all were just huge. Whereas with the girls now, it's really quick. We can just turn on a dime and whatever. Anyway, so the main thing with TFS was like, well, let's just grab all sorts of weird and wacky stuff, use anything rather than having to be a guitar band per se. Yeah, and that's about it. And when you pick up a drum machine or something and you just press go, generally it comes up with something that's sort of, you know, modern R&B or hip hop kind of orientated. You know, same as if you pick up a guitar and strum a chord, you kind of, you know, do sort of Chuck Berry or AC/DC type stuff pretty quickly. Yeah. So it's just, it was quite natural to change like that.
The brief was, I think, dictated in first part by necessity, in that we had to just sort of, you know, it was a very kind of loose directional shift. It was just sort of like more of a conversation about what anyone wanted to bring to the table. I think Gaz and Fee were trying to just play around with a total different bunch of sounds. And I think possibly leading on from Feeling Kind of Free with the Drones of like a new era of really messing with the, you know, what his guitar would sound like, and a bunch of different kinds of ingredients in, you know, sort of grabbing synth sounds and grabbing drum sounds, and just kind of having everything in a really, I don't know, different, non-traditional kind of rock and roll way. And then in the same breath, we were just sort of bringing what me and Hammer could bring to the table in terms of our different styles and influences. And so it was a little bit chaotic in that it was sort of like a free-for-all, like anything would go. And at the same time, just trying to grab something real quick so we could take it on the road.
So before we know it, you're releasing your third album, Deep States. There's so much going on musically in these songs. Is the starting point just mucking around with machines, or do you have a sound in your head to start with?
No sound, really, no sound. I mean, yeah, we just muck around. We've got, you can kind of see it here. We've got like a big old 60s demountable classroom like that behind me. That's a Steinway we're looking after for our neighbour who's moving house. We just set up in here and everyone just brings all the crap they've got and we just plug it all in and, you know, drink some beers and cook some food. And eventually, generally it's the happy accidents that stick. Eventually someone will do something wrong on a certain piece of equipment and that'll be the starting point, really. So there's no pre-planning in a sense, you know. It's just whatever happens. If it's good, it's good. You know, what you see is the tip of the iceberg. I mean, 90% of the stuff we make is crap, so we just chuck it out, delete it. But yeah. So we just experiment till something cool happens, and then we're off and racing.
It's a blessing to be able to have the freedom to know that whatever idea comes up, however bizarre you want to make your sound, or some really strange stuff is captured in the record. There's snippets of strange conversations, and sometimes we're thinking about a song and really we're kind of concept driven, like the idea of what the song's talking about is then represented in all kinds of different ways, musically and otherwise. So, you know, we dig in and find like snippets from, I don't know, there's like a cassette of a Jesus, like this kind of a whole lot of, I don't know, really weird sounds in there. There's a recording of a Stasi secret police thing, and I don't know, like it's very concept driven, and yeah, there is a certain amount of mad freedom, which is really exciting. And then at the same time, sometimes you're like, oh my God, we're in a wormhole and maybe we'll never ever get out.
Lyrically, the album kind of documents these crazy times. How important is it for you to, as an artist, to have something to say with your music?
Yeah, really important. It sort of just makes sense. It makes music direct. I mean, you know, music, like any good art, is kind of, it just seems like it's what, you know, differentiates the good from the bad is that the good is it has some sort of energy. It's like a force of nature, you know, it has that. And it could be, you know, Led Zeppelin, or that could be Leonard Cohen. It doesn't have to be a million decibels to be a force of nature. But yeah, and a quick way to, you know, make that happen is just to talk straight. And if you're going to talk straight, then you're going to need something to talk about. And there's always plenty to talk about. You know, I have a rule where it's like, you know, I know in the past I've, you know, fucked it up and overstepped it and ignored it, and the results have never been that great when I've done that. But my rule is just kind of, you sort of keep it like Lou Reed would do it, which is just, you know, almost casual street talk, conversational, talking simply about just whatever's going on, you know. And that seems to work. It's much simpler than you'd think. It's like, you know, if you play a piano, you don't have to do that much. It's the piano, or it already sounds good. You know, if you play drums sound lovely. They just, you know, like same with if you plug a Gibson into a Marshall, you don't have to do much. It's most of the work is done. And I think that's the same with lyrics. Like, you don't have to do much. Just speak simply, and then as well, just use your imagination. Chuck a few zingers in there. You know, I don't know, curveballs. Yeah, that's pretty basic.
I just want to pick out a couple of tracks that I enjoyed. The Donkey, one of the more interesting songs on the album. The vocal doesn't come in for about a minute. Tell me what it's about and how the sounds came together.
Well, I think we kind of, I guess, you know, to go back to your question from ages away, do we do anything that's sort of premeditated? We did this time sort of go, wouldn't it be nice if we could just sit around for at least a couple of songs and actually, you know, play as a band in the room, rather than the other technique, which is what I was talking to earlier as well, which is more like, when you put it together, it's more like editing a film than it is kind of being a band in a room just jamming out. But with the Donkey, we wanted something where we were all in a room, and, you know, which meant, okay, it's going to be a pretty standard rock setup, so we kind of needed something different. So I don't know, I was just listening to music, and there was a sort of a flamenco song that I can't remember the name of, but it did have the name Caramelia in it, and it had a really cool chord progression. And then I tried to remember it without listening to it, and I came up with a different chord progression. So that's what gives it that kind of flavor. You know, it's not your straight rock and roll scales. And then as well, you know, we're about 10 kilometers out of town, and near the town there's a little paddock, and there was a donkey that had a baby. And so we'd stop and look at this cute little female donkey, this little donkey baby. And yeah, so I thought, well, the donkey. And then, you know, I don't know, and then just the way my mind works, well, what would a donkey not do? Well, it wouldn't be this sort of creature that's obsessed with vengeance, you know. So, you know, we wound up about that. So it's kind of like, you know, Noah's Ark, and the donkey's just sick of being used, and it's not going to go on the ark, but it doesn't mind drowning if humanity gets drowned too, or all the evil people get drowned too. So yeah, it's pretty basic. Yeah, I don't know.
I love the Donkey. I just found that to be a really good, I don't know, I think I loved recording that, and I loved that was a real feeling of like, oh yeah, we're all back in the room. And it's such a dynamic track, and I think it took us a bunch of takes to nail it, because it's sort of, you push it too fast and it's becomes too savage, or it's kind of too in your face, and then it goes the other way and it just kind of falls apart. So I kind of feel like those sort of tracks where it's really on a knife edge if you're going to get it or not. And even in the mixing, I think it was still on the fence. So I kind of love that track. That I just feel like it really represents a time and place for us playing and responding together. And of course the content, like it's just this crazy idea again where we sort of think about it and we're like around the dinner table like, is this a stupid idea? And we're like, no, it's good. And the song is this kind of from the perspective of a donkey that gets left behind and all the other animals get taken on the ark and the apocalypse comes or whatever. And it's just kind of a couple of happy accidents. There was this baby donkey down the road from where we were recording as well. And I think there's just sort of a bunch of funny inputs that had, I don't know, just has us. We went and looked at that donkey every day after practice because it was so cute. And it's just, I don't know, the whole sort of song represents a particular space in time for me.
One of my favorite tracks is the final track, the Confinement of the Quarks.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to know how that track came together and what did you use to create those amazing sounds?
Yeah, that is a really cool one. We sort of joked about, again, like it's funny, this album, I mean, in some contexts, it could be kind of considered a concept album. A lot of the songs, it's like we are saying goodbye to planet Earth and kind of following that in a humorous way, in a devastated way, and, projecting different environments where that might be a reality or not. And Confinement of the Quarks, I think Gaz dug it up out of, like, it was literally a weird synth jam that no one thought was going to be part of an album. It was more like trying to find melody, I think, or like experiment with this particular sound on this synth. And we kind of, Gaz sort of dug it up and we were like, this sounds like what you would be playing if you were in a spaceship and you were leaving the planet for the last time and you're looking, like it's got this really weird kind of cheesy 70s anthem. You can imagine it being part of a sci-fi TV show, but then at the same time it's got this weird earnest quality and this sort of analogness. And we thought we could then, we all kind of fell in love with it. And guys was like, is this work? And we're like, yeah, this is the credits roll on the movie of Planet Earth. This is perfect. And it's a great way to end the record. And originally I think it was going to come after New Romeo Agent because it's kind of in the same ilk. But we just said, nah, it's just got to be on the end of the record on its own. It follows Legal Ghost now, and that fits really great as well. And we thought we'd develop it, and then we're just like, no, it's got to just be on its own. And I think Fiona just put the bass track down to the synth, and that's it. And that was a funny decision about, not to add vocals or, I don't know, it could have been built up, but in the end, I love it too. It's just really simple and speaks for itself, I think.
I think Confinement of the Quarks was something we'd noodled out 6 months prior, just the general melody, and then had forgotten about. Anyway, we came across it again and dug it up, and it was kind of cool because it sort of sounded like it reminded us of the theme music to the Terminator films, and which is kind of, it was kind of cool. It's kind of, I mean, it's borderline kitsch in the way that, I mean, those soundtracks for those films, they're kind of crap. They're sort of cheap shit Hollywood in an epic way. They're certainly not. They're not Beethoven, are they? But at the same time, that makes them kitsch. So, and there's something about Confinement of the Quarks that had that heroic, sort of semi-tragic, epic sci-fi vibe. Yeah, and then we just laid it up with other stuff. Didn't take long, and then we had it, and then it had to go at the end of the album because it just does seem like the credits are rolling, and the whole thing's coming to a close. The film is coming to a close. Yeah.
Because of the way you created the album, and just stumbling across happy accidents, as you said, how hard is it going to be to replicate some of these songs on stage?
Yeah, I don't know. And we've got to start doing that this week. We've got to start figuring out what we're going to do. Generally, we just give everything a go, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We're not fussy about replicating them exactly. Yeah. Well, you can get them in a ballpark, but yeah, I mean, if we it works either way. If we were always trying to, record albums that sound live, they wouldn't be that interesting. And then, the whole recording process is so separate or it can be so separate to performing live as a little unit. But, we'll just make up any old shit. And sometimes it's impossible to play. Like, say, Confinement of the Quarks, we'd never be able to do that. But, yeah. So I don't know. But, I mean, Donkey, the first song, whatever it's called, the Greatest Story Ever Told. I think, Suburbiopia, even though that's kind of drum machine and synth driven, there's something about it that you could, if you kind of just bend the rules a bit with the guitars, you could do that. So yeah, and some things you'd be surprised they just work, and they almost play themselves. Other things are just horribly frustrating, and we feel like the crappiest band in the world when we're trying to
play. we're having those exact conversations, and like, oh shit, like what did I play in that moment? Or it is funny, definitely. And a couple of them won't make it, I don't think, to be able to be reproduced live in any capacity, but we're going to have a good crack at most of them. Even New Agent Romeo, like, we're all playing different things. I mean, Gaz is playing keys in that, and I don't even think there's a guitar that's made it. Maybe maybe a little bit of one of my takes ended up on that. But so like that's kind of like thinking a new dynamic live. It's like we're going to have to switch around, and Gaz suddenly plays keys and all the rest of it. And that might happen. We might just have a crack and see what comes up. So that's our next job, and we've got to do it pretty quickly. I think we've got a month to roll it together. Would have been earlier, but lockdowns prevented me from going to see those guys again. So just been trying to chip away. And I mean, that's nothing new. Every album we've had to sort of then reinterpret songs live, and they end up with their own lifespan and sound. But that's kind of a cool part of it, I think. Yeah. And I mean, every time, even after the big lockdowns last year, when we had to suddenly go back and quickly play this tour with King Giz at the start of the year, there was a couple of tracks we had to relearn, like Paradise and Raindrops, and we're just literally looking like there's no one else that knows how to play them, so like we have to do it, and they're not written down anywhere. I think I look back in my notes, like my early recording notes, and it says like G riff or something, and I'm like, what the hell does that mean? So it's not unfamiliar for us to have to do that, and it's fun, so it's all good.
So did you play much guitar on the album?
Oh yeah, heaps. Yeah, there is a lot, and some of it as well sort of sound very, very guitar-y. Like if you listen to the very first sort of sound on the album at the beginning of the first song, that's a guitar, but it's just sort of mangled into this weird sort of mid-20th century Stockhausen-esque kind of thing, by just a couple of pedals and a whammy bar. I don't know. It's, yeah. I play heaps, and then I can never remember what the fuck I was doing. Yeah, and that's a pain in the ass. I've got to learn it. But I've got like, I use the Line 6. I got the newest Line 6 now, like the multi-effects pedals. They're really cool. They're very good. They just the emulations are mind-boggling, because I've got half of the pedals that are in it, like have been digitized and put in it. I've got them here, and you would never know the difference between the real thing and the copy. Anyway, the great thing about those pedals is you can you know, they're almost a computer, you know what I mean? So you can kind of just do the craziest shit with them, and you can then, I mean, if on the album I was playing a guitar plugged into the back of a synthesizer, then, you know, through some glitch pedal and stuff, I can do that easy with the Line 6 gear. I can just bring it up on stage and bang it out. So yeah, I'm generally not really worried about, you know, failing in that way. Seems to work.
So tell me about some of the stuff that you used on the album. What the guitars and synths that you use mainly?
Yeah, so I sort of had my classic setup in terms of, I got rid of, actually, from the last record, we put all the guitars through some ghetto blasters, and I was using a Line 6 pedal. And then, you know, that was cool in a way because you have your Line 6 operating and you have a certain amount of infinite, you can use whatever you want in the whole world, but then you end up with just a bunch of controls and a bunch of sounds and stick with them, as in a live setup. But then when I was touring with that, it broke and could never be repaired. And so I sort of put together a different pedal setup. So this record represents what I've sort of been using live. I think it was an addition of one pedal, which I can't remember what it's called, but we've dubbed it the lamb, because it sort of sounds like a sad crying lamb. And that's, I think, the only new pedal addition. And yeah, we didn't run anything through the ghetto blasters this time. It's a little bit more representative of the sound, which I think we've been balancing out live, like me and Gaz, a sort of call and response. I got a new little Yamaha keyboard, which is sort of like an old school analog, like kind of rip, which features quite a bit. And yeah, I think that's mainly what my setup mainly is.
What's the grand plan for TFS?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, look, sometimes I think any musician at the moment is just having a kind of existential crisis about what the hell we're all meant to be doing. And, you know, sometimes I reflect on the amount of touring that we got done in such a short time, and all the communities that we visited in all kinds of weird corners of the world, and just seems surreal, you know, and I can't foresee a place where that could be easy to access again, and that's really sad. And then sometimes we're flipping, there's some news and we're all full of hope, and it's like, oh no, we can all make it, and maybe we can get to Europe next year, or maybe we can do you know, whatever, maybe. And so I think at the moment, to be honest, it's good mental health practice to not really think about it too far in advance. You know, like, we're really excited just at the prospect of being able to be in the same room together and possibly doing some of these shows in support of this record. And we're absolutely rapt that we managed to get the album together under this mad duress. And we're celebrating that at the moment. So that's cool. Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, kind of what has taken the place of that, you know, very solo album is the thing I'm doing with Jim White and Chris. Springtime, it's called. Yeah, it's just it's a whole lot more earthy and organic than TFS. You know, there's heaps more, you know, expansive improvisation. I mean, there's a fair bit of improvisation in TFS, but with Jim and Chris, I mean, you know, they're jazz pretty much. They can do anything, and we can just go anywhere when we play. And yeah, so it's kind of a great thing. I can just float lyrics over the top. So in a sense, that feels as sort of as far into the solo thing as I would like to go, even though it's not really solo. But just because the solo record I did was really fucking hard work, because I had to do everything. I hadn't bargained on that. Because usually when you're recording, you know, someone can be doing a guitar take, and then I don't know, I can go outside and go to the pub, you know. But with the solo album, it was me 12 hours a day. It was exhausting. It was really shit, but it was good. But yeah, so I don't want to be the guy that does all the work. Yeah, I'm too old.
Right, mate. We look forward to Deep States coming out, and always good to catch up with you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it coming out as well and getting life back on track somehow. Yeah. Good to talk to you, man.